My family left me behind because my sister holds me responsible for her divorce. Years later, I received an unexpected email that explained everything and included proof. I messed up her life with it. Nearly 7 years ago, my family removed me from their lives and forced me out of the house. I was 22 and not financially stable enough to rent an apartment on my own. What happened was so sudden that I had no time to prepare, either mentally or financially. My sister was the reason for everything that happened. My sister, Hannah, 37, and I have never been close due to the big age difference between us. She married her boyfriend Pete, 39, after 3 years of dating when she was 27. They were married for 3 years. They divorced 3 years after getting married because Hannah accused Pete of cheating with one of my friends. I was living with my parents after college because I had just started working and wanted to save some money before moving out. My parents were fine with that setup, but that changed when my sister said she was getting a divorce. She came home one day, crying hard, and said she had filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months. Then, she blamed me for introducing my friend to him. Emily, 28F, was trying to gain weight, and since Pete was a certified dietitian, he agreed to help her out. I introduced her to him, and it turns out she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I couldn't believe this was happening. Even though Emily and I weren't close, I knew she was a good person and would never get involved with a married man. Cheating just wasn't like Pete at all. He was really into Hannah and always spoke highly of her, so it was tough to accept that he had cheated on her. I was skeptical, but my parents trusted her right away and didn't ask any questions, even though she had no evidence of him cheating. They believed her without question, but I can't blame them. They would naturally side with their daughter over their son-in-law, no matter the truth. I couldn't figure out why they just kicked me out because Hannah said to. One day, she came in, threw a fit, and somehow got my parents to kick me out just because I introduced Emily to Pete. She said I was the reason her marriage fell apart, and my parents sided with her for some reason. I felt crushed and tried to talk to my parents, but they wouldn't hear me out. They said if I didn't leave, they would kick me out themselves. In a single day, I lost my family and my home, and I had no clue where to turn. I was crying on the sidewalk with all my things for about an hour before I managed to get myself together and went to a friend's place for the night. I reached out to them every day for the next few days, but I had no success. A guy I know let me stay at his place while I looked for an apartment. My parents decided I was to blame for the divorce. My parents told me they were disgusted by my actions before kicking me out. It didn't make sense because I wasn't the one who cheated with Pete. They blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them. When I went to see them, my mom said she'd call the cops if I didn't go away. After that, I understood they were serious and really did hold me responsible for what had occurred. I wasn't really surprised because my sister had always been the favorite. My parents never planned for a second child, so I often felt overlooked. I didn't mind it much as a kid, but I didn't realize it would lead to something significant later on. Looking back, I realize I should have anticipated it, but truthfully, I doubt anyone in my situation would have expected this. I tried to make sense of everything on my own for the next few weeks, since Hannah and my parents had pretty much cut me off, and I couldn't reach them. I couldn't talk to Pete either since he blocked me as well, which confused me. I couldn't find him because Hannah and Pete had moved out of the house and gone to live with their parents. I couldn't reach anyone involved, so I turned to my last option to find out the truth: Emily. Emily and I weren't very close, but I needed to talk to her. So, I asked to meet up one day to explain what was going on. I asked her if Hannah's claim about the affair was true, and she strongly denied it. I honestly believed her. Emily mentioned that she had only met Pete a few times, and it was strictly professional. She was confused about why Hannah would make such a terrible accusation against her. She mentioned that she had been in a relationship for a couple of years and was planning to get married in a few months. She showed me pictures, and what she said was much more convincing than anything Hannah had mentioned. I didn't have any evidence, but I felt deep down that Hannah was not being honest about why the divorce happened. Without proof, I couldn't return to my family, and there was no way I could go back empty-handed. I really wanted to go back to living with my family. I missed them a lot, even though they had hurt me. Eventually, I managed to get past it and continue with my life. I found a place and focused on my job to keep myself occupied. I had to pay the bills, so it was a better way to cope than just sitting around feeling down. I didn't have any other options. I was in a lot of pain, but I understood I had to keep moving forward, whether my family was there for me or not. Time went by, and now I'm in a much better place. I recently moved from a small apartment to a larger one and got engaged to my girlfriend of 2 years about a week ago. Our engagement post turned out to be a turning point for me. Just a few days after sharing it, I got an unexpected email. It explained Hannah's divorce in detail and provided all the answers I was looking for, along with proof attached. My fiancée, Liza, 30F, typically shared our moments on Instagram, but the photo from our engagement ended up on her Facebook feed too, reaching a larger audience. A lot of people saw it since it was a public post. My ex-brother-in-law, Pete, was there too. He was someone my fiancée met at a seminar a few years ago. She's a doctor and added him on Facebook, which is how he found me. It's a small world, and for once I felt happy about that. He contacted me a few days after we posted, but instead of using social media, he chose to send me an anonymous email. He later said he did this to avoid feeling strange about his actions. It had been years since his divorce, and he didn't want to come off as someone who couldn't move on from the past. He was the one who blocked me initially, so it felt strange for him to reach out after all this time about something that happened years ago. The email I got contained the whole story and evidence of what happened 7 years ago. I was shocked as I read through it. It turns out my sister was the one cheating on Pete, not the other way around, like she had been saying for a long time. That was a big lie, but what was even more surprising was that she had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just like she accused him of doing. Frank, 28M, worked as a cashier at the grocery store close to Hannah's house, and I never would have guessed they knew each other since I had never seen them together. It seems they managed to keep it a secret, but Pete still found out. When Hannah was confronted, she told Pete it was all my fault. I had introduced her to Frank and mentioned he needed her help since he was an aspiring singer and she was a decent singer too. She agreed to help him, and suddenly they were in love without realizing it. She claimed that I was involved and that it helped them keep everything hidden for a long time. Clearly, this was all a total lie, and I had no idea that Frank and Hannah were involved. He was really mad when he found out and ended up blocking my whole family. Now, he says it was pretty dumb to do that, but at the time, he was just too angry to think clearly. He explained everything to me in person because the email was meant to be impersonal. He didn't want it traced back to him, but I figured it out. The evidence he provided was a series of screenshots showing emails between my sister and Frank. They talked about how easy it was to deceive Pete and shared confessions of love along with plans for their next meeting. She couldn't deny any of this since she had even signed the emails with her middle name, which not many people know about. I had her caught for sure. I realized it was Pete who sent me the email after checking Liza's Facebook friends. My instinct said it was related to social media, and once I found Pete in her list, I reached out to him. We met a few days ago. He mentioned that he learned about what Hannah told her family from Emily, who had met him a couple of years ago. I asked her to keep my side of the story a secret, and I regretted it when I realized that if I hadn't, she might have told Pete. Then I could have proven my innocence a long time ago. They ran into each other a few years back. She asked him about the divorce, and they started talking. Eventually, he found out what Hannah had shared with us. He admitted he wanted to discuss it and be honest with me, but didn't because it felt strange. If Pete weren't so easily embarrassed, my life would have been much simpler. I forgave him because I needed his help to take down my sister, and I knew he would be in on it too. Hannah was definitely lying to my parents to get financial help during her divorce. She even threw me under the bus, knowing that one chat with Emily would reveal everything. I couldn't understand how someone, especially a family member, could be so selfish. I'm pretty sure she never took the time to clarify things, and my parents just believed whatever stories she told them during her divorce. She knew that if our parents found out she was the cheater, she would be in serious trouble, and she couldn't take that chance. It was finally out, and I was ready to use it to destroy her life, just like she had done to mine all those years ago. I wasn't sure if my family still lived in the same house, since I hadn't seen them in 7 years, but it turned out they hadn't moved. I checked in with an old neighbor before arriving and was happy to find out that Hannah was still living with them too. I wasn't surprised by that. Hannah had always been lazy and avoided any work. If she could live with her aging parents and make them do all the chores, she would definitely choose that option. 2 days ago, Pete and I arrived unexpectedly at their house. My mom opened the door, and we hardly gave her a moment to understand what was going on before we stepped inside. My dad and Hannah were in the living room, and we looked like a happy family again. But that didn't last long. Their faces changed as soon as we walked in. My dad started threatening us right away, saying he'd call the cops if we didn't leave his house. I quickly responded, telling him he could do whatever he wanted, but only after he read the documents we were about to show him. My parents seemed really confused, but Hannah looked like she was about to throw up and quickly left to go to her room. I believed she was attempting to get away, but it wouldn't have mattered in the end. Pete showed the divorce papers and the screenshots of Hannah and Frank's emails while I shared the actual story. Pete informed my parents that Hannah had to sell our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring, as part of the settlement. She couldn't afford to pay him because she's a high school teacher. My parents were already shocked by what we had shared, and that was just the final straw. My dad confronted Hannah about everything that happened. When she continued to lie despite the evidence, he kicked her out. He gathered her things and gave her the bags, then told everyone to leave their house. I didn't need to be told again and left with Pete while my sister begged my parents to let her back in, just like I had done years before. This was karma at its finest, and I felt great about it. My sister came over a few hours ago, insisting that I fix things with our parents right away. I had no idea how she tracked me down, but I made it clear that I owed her nothing now. She had messed up my life before, so I returned the favor. Now we were even. It seemed like she had lost all her pride because the moment I said that, she broke down in tears and called me a monster. I wasn't interested in her drama, so I closed the door while she kept crying. I put on my headphones and listened to music while Lisa, my fiancée, worked in her study. This way, we wouldn't disturb each other. Eventually, Hannah walked away, but not before leaving a note with a marker on my door, labeling me as a revengeful monster. I honestly don't think I did anything wrong, and I don't feel bad about it at all, but Hannah seems to believe I'm the bad guy in this situation. I just returned the favor she did to me years ago. The difference is, I was honest, while she just lied and betrayed me. What do you think? Ida ruined my sister's life and got her kicked out 7 years after she blamed me for her divorce. Update 1. Hannah continues to bother me, even after a week has gone by since she was kicked out. After she called me for the 14th time today, I had to mention the cops to get her to stop. I have no idea how she got my phone number and address, but that's not my main concern at the moment. Hannah wants me to feel sorry for her because she claims a teacher's salary isn't enough. I don't buy it. She's just frustrated about finding a place and covering her own rent, electricity, and groceries since our parents kicked her out. I can't say I feel too sorry for her. Yes, I blocked her number multiple times, but it seems she's having her friends add me to conference calls, so it doesn't really matter. My parents are just as bad, if not worse, than Hannah. They discovered my Facebook and noticed the post about my engagement too. Now, they want to be involved in my life again, and have even said they want to come to my wedding. They haven't said sorry yet, but somehow they think I should invite them to my wedding, which is a big deal for me. I don't get how some people have the nerve to say things like this, but at least I'm not engaging with it. Liza and I have spent a lot of time reading their texts because there's no way they can be serious right now. It's just really unfortunate for them. Update 2. Hannah came to my house again after I told her I would report her for harassment yesterday. I was getting ready to leave for work when she threw herself on the hood of my car and wouldn't move until I talked to her. I was really frustrated and ended up calling the police this time. They took her away while she screamed and cried, trying to paint me as the bad guy. But no one was falling for her sad girl act. I took a while to press charges against her. But once I did, I headed to work. I didn't want this incident to mess up my day. I knew my parents would help her out since she was their favorite, and I was right. My parents, after bailing her out, sent me a long text about how I was being too hard on them for a mistake they made nearly 10 years ago. It was funny because everything my sister and parents did to me was neither truthful nor accidental. They understood their actions and were fully aware of their cruelty, and yet they still chose to throw me out onto the street, knowing I had nowhere else to go. Now that I can do the same to them, I don't feel the need to be forgiving or kind. I replied to my parents that they lost the right to control my choices 7 years ago, so they should stop fooling themselves. I haven't blocked them yet because I haven't had time to check my messages, but I will do it soon. I just want to be done with this family for good. Update 3. I just got home from work and checked my socials. My parents sent me another long message. Liza and I experienced it together, and I can honestly say this was the funniest thing I've ever read. I think those people have no idea that their words and actions don't affect me anymore. I'm just finding it amusing how out of touch and sad they really are. They still think we're family. They told me they've taken Hannah back in and decided that both their kids deserve a second chance. I was never in the wrong. They took my sister back in and wanted Liza and me to come over for dinner soon. They thought it would be a good way to settle our differences before the wedding. It's pretty presumptuous of them to think I'd want them at my wedding at all. We laughed at their ridiculous message. Then, I replied, making it clear that I had no interest in what they invited us to and was perfectly fine living away from them, just like I had for the past 7 years. They made it clear that I was better off without them, and I will always be grateful for that. I didn't need them anymore, and I didn't want their forgiveness so they could keep pretending to be a happy family with my sister like before. I blocked them for good after that last message. I didn't even want to laugh anymore. I was finished and I was leaving. I'm sure they'll reach out to me soon, but it's not happening this time. Liza is all the family I need now, and I'm content with just her. My parents and sister have never been able to see beyond their own perspectives, and I doubt they ever will. The next time they reach out to me, it will be through my lawyer.